So hi again and welcome to The Humble Pie. Really happy to be with you today to speak to a good friend of mine, Vincent Rafrray, who's the founder of the Future Collective. And we're going to talk about a couple different things today that I'm really, really excited about. In particular, blockchain, crypto, the future of work, and some of the other areas of interest that I know are busy tickling Vincent's fancy at the moment. So thanks for jumping on The Humble Pie today, Vincent. Awesome. So in terms of your work and kind of, you run the Future Collective. Do you want to just sort of give me a quick introduction or give our listeners a quick introduction on, what that is, what you do, and I suppose also coming out of the background that I know you used to have in the creative agency space where you ran and built your own, agency empire all over the world. What kind of led you to creating this new sort of future-focused business and what you do?
Yeah, that felt like quite a while ago, running that empire. My background is in advertising as a creative director, and rightly so. I spent 10 years in the Middle East building that ad agency. And when I realized that sort of the advertising industry was changing drastically and it was moving into these... Sorry, man.
That's okay. No worries. You just pick it up when you're ready. Yeah.
When I realized that the advertising industry was changing drastically because of the way technology was changing, the way communication was changing, the way the consumer was changing. These things were becoming more and more fragmented as we were going. And I think one of the things that I wanted to get more involved with was the strategic aspect of communication and how to really connect with people, because it wasn't necessarily creating a nice advertising campaign that would necessarily solve a business problem or a culture within that business, or if your product was irrelevant.
Right.
So I wanted to get more into the strategic space of helping sort of brands and businesses navigate the change, become a business that was aware, have products and services that were relevant to their audience, and then once they understood everything, to communicate in an effective manner. And advertising agencies weren't set up to kind of do all of that. And that's how Future Collective was born. And, it was hard to pigeonhole us in the beginning because people wanted to know whether we were an ad agency or whether we were a consultancy or a production house. Like, it was all of those things combined, We were looking for like more of a holistic view on the issues that businesses faced, and communication was one of them. Having a proper corporate culture was another. Helping them stay relevant through producing trend reports on their industry was another aspect. So all these things, upskilling their staff, all these things sort of help to contribute to the success of a business. You can't have one without the other. And that's essentially what Future Collective does. We help companies navigate the change. We help them be relevant in their product, service, or packaging. We help them build an authentic culture so their narrative or whatever they're trying to communicate comes across authentically from their view. And build awareness with them, to try and say, look, this is what's happening in the world. This is how it's changing. This is how you should position yourself for the future.
Yeah. I find it, I resonate with so much that you just said. Now, I find it interesting that, we all have an interest in the future, obviously, but I suppose specifically with businesses who are constantly needing to meet the demand of where customers are at and how to try and predict where that might go and the trends that they need to follow. in order to stay relevant. That seems to be an increasingly difficult, but at the same time busy space to be working in. It's and it seems to also be loaded with contradictions, the kind of thing that is impossible to forecast, but yet there's loads of trends to see, and so on and so on. So, how have you found it working with businesses, or anybody really, when you're trying to essentially help them to see or to think about something that isn't there yet? Is it trying to encourage them on a journey of imagination? Is it trying to sort of get them to, appeal to their sense of greed? How do you do it? How do you sort of direct that process?
Well, it's a combination of two. It does appear to, well, a sense of greed is a bit harsh, but I mean, we're helping businesses make money at the end of the day,
Yeah.
And what businesses are starting to realize that by, doing good and being a good business, for lack of a better word, is good business. It's what people want, it's what the world needs. And in that sort of angle, the money is, if you go about a certain way, and if you try and do something good, the money will come. But in saying that, how do you convince them of a certain direction? And we live in a hyper-connected world, so we've got that information at our fingertips, and there's a lot of very smart companies, going in certain directions and paving the way for others to follow. And you share some of these insights with them, you show them, you almost build a picture of what the world might look like and how they can position themselves like this. But if they say, but we've always done it this way, and I mean, they tend to see that things are shifting and that they need to do something, It's easier now, like in the last few years, than it was a while back, because a while back the change was a bit slower, but now with the pandemic and that, the change seems to be exponential. We've adapted to new technologies very quickly. We're working very differently, and there's all these sort of aspects around us in this day and age that are increasing that rate of change. So they're more likely to buy, a new trend or a new way of doing things simply because they don't have another choice,
Right. Eat or be eaten. And it's interesting what you say about technology and how that has just sort of totally upset or rethought economies of scale and made things scalable and sped up the change of how society works and how customers interact and everything else. I suppose one of the most exciting areas where this is happening at an insane rate is the sort of blockchain and I suppose also related to the cryptocurrency world as well. Even though, and it's interesting because I think that it at the moment is clearly very early in this space because it's still dominated by internet fanboys and so on. Before you have that greater adoption curve coming on, but at the same time there's a great deal of interest in the various applications of blockchain and how that could keep on transforming the world. So I know that you're excited about this space, and so maybe there's a couple things that you could sort of look at from the top of your list. What are the things that you're most excited about for blockchain?
It's a massive, massive topic and a massive subject, but it's a great example of how, with the current state of affairs, how we're starting to see cracks appear in our economy, in our environment, and all these things that we talk about, but nothing seems to be done about it, and blockchain in a sense removes the centralization of services, and make them more decentralized, so it removes that middleman, and it allows technology to create trust between, two parties. So instead of, for example, having a middleman like a broker or a bank or a government, you create that trust through technology. It's decentralized, it's censorship resistant, it's very secure. I mean, the way the technology works, it's, you cannot hack it. And it's transparent and traceable. Every transactional thing done on the blockchain can be seen and by anyone. So the idea of this technology helping to solve many of the world's problems is very much a reality, because as we speak, I know a lot of people are new to blockchain, but as we speak, there's been a lot of progress in the last few years with applications being built on these different blockchains. And if you can imagine it like the evolution of the internet, so you've got this internet with all these websites on it and, this commerce going around. It's exactly like that with blockchain, without the central entities controlling, without the Googles or the Facebooks or the central entities taking your data or using your data to sell communication advertising to you.
So on that, it's an interesting one, especially around the centralization and the entities who. It almost feels like it's a response to, or at least our gradual waking up to a lot of these entities, being in positions where they abuse and misuse what they do with our data, simply because that, it's just grown so much. They've kind of swollen in size and power because they've got so much data. They've got so much access to a limitless amount of records and what happens, to the point where they can personalize almost everything. And so there's a great deal of power that they wield. And I suppose that's one of the massive applications, but also appeals of blockchain, is that it takes all of that out of it. It doesn't sort of, empower anybody really, because the whole thing is based on, maybe it's worth just having a basic definition for some of the listeners, is, how blockchain actually works. Because as far as I understand it, it's about that sort of network of verifying, certain transactions or what happens on a cryptographic code level, in order for that to then, be sort of put onto the block, or that, that's essentially what blockchain mining is, isn't it?
Well, again, so it can get very technical, but to keep it very simple, you're basically comparing it to a ledger, so you're making sure that if there's one transaction from one party to the other, that transaction is encoded into the ledger, so that transaction is there, and it's on every block on every node in the system. So every computer, let's say, that makes up this network has the same information on that computer as it is on all the computers that make that blockchain.
Right.
So my transaction, let's say I send you a transaction, that transaction is noted on the blockchain for you to see, me to see, and everybody to see. They might not know that this address belongs to this person, but you can see the transactions clearly. And in the same way, you can do that with contracts between two parties or two entities. So you can have an agreement that if I do something and you do something, something else will happen. And that contract is programmed and coded on the blockchain, and whatever needs to come out of that contract is controlled via the blockchain. So it's, in essence, creates that trust between two parties. So if I now say, okay, I want to put my money into a bank, or I want to get my insurance from this person, or I want to buy a house from this person, all those are contractual exchanges, basically. I sign a contract, I pay the money, and I get the house transferred in my name. And you've got these central entities managing that process. And now with technology, you can do this through technology, and also it's a lot more secure and a lot more trustful, because I'm relying on technology and not a human being that might want to put other things within the contract that I might not understand, or charge in excess for their services or whatever other things that there are that costs a lot of money. If you think about like this bank charges that you pay, for example, every time you make a transfer, and those little things, and your yearly account fees, and all these things are managed by that central entity. So in blockchain, you remove that central entity. That agreement is between you and a third party, monitored by the technology, and it's instant. And it costs a lot less than it does doing it the normal way. And this application can be used in so many different ways. If you know that information has been secured on the blockchain and there's a sense of trust there, I mean, you can use that in supply chain management. You could use it in voting, for example, like to make sure votes are all accounted for and that no one has voted twice and stuff. You can use it or universities could use blockchain to verify certificates or diplomas and things that they've given out. Because that's a huge problem around the world where half of these things are forged, or fake. How many times have you heard in the news that some politician doesn't have their degree or something, or faked their degree or didn't finish their things? So things like that, like if all these things were on the blockchain, you wouldn't need to worry that whether this information is true or not, or if you're getting it from a reliable source, because it's on the blockchain. And that can include medical records and all sorts of things. And that's why this technology is so important and so exciting.
So it's interesting because you've got all these amazing applications on the technology itself, but I think often people, at least I certainly didn't for a long time, we don't always make the distinction between the technology and the potential for all these uses and cryptocurrencies as an asset that people invest in and often end up making a lot of money or, losing a lot of money on as well. And so it's easy to kind of conflate the two, whereas they're actually very different. And I think often it seems that a lot of the challenges with understanding blockchain or understanding the application might also stem from the fact that people make that sort of they don't make that distinction between all of these things that you can do on the Ethereum network, on the Cardano network, and so on, versus the price of Ethereum today, and if it's going to be going down 15% on the weekend. So the volatility is an interesting sort of aspect or a characteristic of where it is right now, because it's still early and things are volatile when they're early.
So look, it's first of all, instead of calling them cryptocurrencies, I call them crypto assets, because it immediately puts it into a different class. When you talk about cryptocurrencies, people think they're buying these tokens or these coins, and they don't understand that each token or coin represents a company or an application on the blockchain.
Absolutely.
And if you can make the analogy with the early days of the internet, where you had this technology and this network, and people didn't know quite how to monetize it, because it was slow, and you had to, you had your dial-up modem, and it was like, if I told you back then that you could order your Uber and your Airbnb and do all these things online, you'd say, you're crazy. I can't even download a JPEG, it's so slow. So the technology now for these blockchain technologies is very early on in the game. And you've probably heard people talk about Ethereum and other cryptocurrencies like Cardano and all these other blockchains. And there are currencies, but they're not. They create value by tokenizing their offering. So, for example, if I'm using one of these applications, just like I'm using a website, for example, I get rewarded as the user for using that website through their token. Instead of the money being distributed to a central entity, it's reallocated to the community. So, for example, there's an application called Filecoin, or the File application. It basically works like a iCloud or a Dropbox in the cloud, but it's decentralized, and people that sort of, they decentralize the storage capacity of whatever data is in there, and the people that allow their storage, because we've all got a bit of space on our computers and that we could utilize to mine the Filecoin. So you would let them use your space, and in return you would get rewarded with their token. So in essence, they create these economies within these products, and that's what you're investing in. So if you're investing in Ethereum, for example, you're investing in the future of that network and what's being built on top of that network. If you invest in a decentralized exchange on Ethereum, you're investing in that company that's, providing liquidity to exchange tokens on a blockchain. So it's kind of you're investing in that business, and that's why people are speculating so much, because we don't know which are going to be the future Amazons or Facebooks or Googles of this blockchain. We can start to speculate that certain companies are going in the right direction that are going to change the world, and those are the kind of companies that I look at investing in, and watching very closely, because they're the ones that are, for example, pushing the metaverse narrative, which we can talk about just now, or these NFT narratives, or the DeFi, which is decentralized finance narrative. There's all these different things being created on the blockchain and use cases for people to try. And we don't know who's going to be the winner, or maybe it'll be a combination of a lot of different blockchains becoming this sort of interconnected evolution of the internet,
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
So, I really like what you said around tokenizing the actual project, and that's a good way to see these cryptocurrencies, and certainly a great way to simplify anyone who's sort of starting their journey about learning how this whole space works. Is that essentially you're not necessarily investing in a currency in the same way that you might be buying dollars or euros or pounds, even though there can be the capacity for that, like Bitcoin, which is a store of value, and you can use Bitcoin to transact and to trade and to exchange. But really what these guys do is they call it an ICO, don't they? An initial coin offering. And so Cardano or Solana or, Polygon or whatever they do, they have a particular project that they are busy developing or in development on the blockchain, or on their own blockchain often. And what they do is, in order to raise funds for what they're doing, they create a token that is essentially a token for their business and what it stands for, and try to create a kind of an engaged investor community in what they do. And so the more, just like traditional stocks work, the more progress they have, the more they can show for what they're doing, the higher that stock goes up, the more the coin is worth. And essentially that is what gets exchanged. So I think that's a great way to see it. Essentially these coins are tokens of what these companies are doing, rather than just a coin that you might keep in your account.
Yeah, I think the best example, like imagine Google, okay? So Google, you've got Google Drive as a product of Google. You've got Google Search, you've got Google Translate. So imagine every time you used Google Drive that you got rewarded in a Google Drive token, that you could swap for Bitcoin, okay? And let's say you want to store stuff on Google Drive, you had to pay in your Google token to store Drive. So you pay using the Google Drive token, and you get rewarded using the Google Drive token. So it's rewarding you for using the product, and also you use the token to pay for the product. So that's how these blockchain sort of smart chain things, apps work, as you can see it like that. So imagine Cardano's little ecosystem with all its applications on it. So you've got like decentralized exchanges to exchange tokens from one project to another. You've got DeFi or decentralized finance applications where you can loan your crypto, or borrow crypto, or earn interest on your crypto, or pool your crypto, or stake your crypto, or a million different things you can do with your crypto. You've got the gaming aspects and the NFT side of it. So you've got these blockchain games. I mean, this is fascinating. You've got like these blockchain games where within the game you can buy assets and earn assets by playing the game. And it's been such a successful model that one example is Axie Infinity, which is a blockchain game where you buy these little characters and you fight them against each other, almost like a card collector's game type thing. And you earn, for winning those games, you earn like $1 or $2 in their tokens, you know. And then it's so successful that you've got half of Asia, you know, jumping on this game because guys are making more money playing the game than they are in their actual jobs. And then within the game, you've got these economies where you can loan your Axies out to other players who can't afford to buy the Axies on their own. So they loan those and they pay a percentage of their earnings to the people that loan. So you can create passive income within the game. And there's many of these things popping up. You've got, so that's why I say it's such a vast topic with all these things happening that, I can give you examples for days.
I find it, I suppose it's to be expected, but at the moment there's obviously a big chasm with that speculation, you know, where things are and the actual progress that a lot of these great projects, are having right now versus, where the price is being speculated at for now. And that's what you do when you invest, right? You're buying into the future of that company and what things will be like at that point. So with that in mind, what do you think are some of the things that, let's say, everyday businesses, entrepreneurs, maybe bigger organizations, you know, people who are transacting, who are, working with their clients, working on projects on an everyday basis, what do you think are some of the influences that we're likely to see as a result of blockchain? I don't necessarily mean, suddenly, electricians are getting paid in Bitcoin necessarily, although I'm sure we'll see that. But maybe some of the kind of the takeaways or some of the things that are here to stay because of the influence of blockchain technology or the influence of decentralization and so on. And maybe if we are even seeing some of that already.
So, I mean, again, it's twofold. So the first one is, companies that are investing into Bitcoin. So they're putting their balance sheets into Bitcoin instead of cash because, the dollar is becoming deflationary. So a lot of them are putting their assets into crypto because they find Bitcoin a hedge against what's happening around the world. That's the first way of doing it. And there's a lot of great companies like MicroStrategy that invested millions and billions of dollars buying Bitcoin. And it's going to be interesting to see where those type of companies get to, because I mean, if the numbers are right, I mean, they could be pretty happy in a few years' time. But so that's the one side. But why is it interesting for businesses? Well, it's like, even if we look at sort of where we are today. So with technology like Zoom and all these other things that we've now become quite accustomed to because of the lockdown, it's helped us like become more okay with working this way, working remotely, working digitally like this. It's almost conditioning us to be almost like this avatar of ourselves, like everything that we do now seems to relate to digital in some way. So if for example, if I want to flex digitally, that blue tick on my Twitter or Instagram, that means something to me. In the digital space, that means that I'm important.
Great example.
And you're starting to see how this space and how companies are involving themselves in the digital space is changing drastically, and they're trying to get in, and some of them aren't getting it right. So, for example, the advertisers on TikTok, for example, if you see an ad on TikTok, it's not going to work, because that's not what that audience is looking for. They're looking for authenticity. They'll buy from their friends, and they'll buy from influencers, but they'll definitely not look at an ad. So as companies understand this digital landscape, they'll start to understand how blockchain sort of fits into that, because it's one thing having a website and being digital as a company, but it's another thing using those tools to actually move your brand or your business forward in some direction. So the first thing I would do is just be aware of blockchain space and as a business and what it means and how it's changing various industries. It's very easy to do. You can just research this. And then the next is to look at your own industry and see how blockchain is being utilized within your own industry, because as we see with gaming, for example, and the way blockchain has changed gaming, it's going to change banking and finance. It's going to change insurance. It's going to change all those traditional avenues of doing business. You've got to think of it as an evolution of the internet. So just like you first had a website and then, the mobile phone sort of took over, so you had to have an app. Now you, as a business, you're going to have all those things plus an understanding of how blockchain can help you, whether it's through within your working system of your business, or whether it's by like using the technology. And I'll give you an example. Like Louis Vuitton, for example, created a digital version of their bag, that someone could utilize within a game or a metaverse of sorts, And that bag got sold for more than the actual thing, So you can start to see this jump into this digital realm. And, a lot of this is being driven by NFTs, which your audience might have heard of. These are non-fungible tokens, or like, you can have NFTs as images or music or a piece of data. It's just a secured asset on the blockchain, very much like a token or a coin, but it represents, a piece of art or music or something like that. And just that space is huge. And I think that's what's going to cause mass adoption in the space, because if you and me and everybody are living in these virtual worlds, already on Zoom, you can change your background and you can, like, I see there's plugins where you can have skins and stuff. So just take that a step further when everybody's wearing virtual goggles and interacting in these virtual environments. And I did one yesterday. There was a Cardano summit, and it was a virtual summit. And the way you would enter, I'll actually send you the link for your viewers to have a look. You enter it as an avatar, and you're in this world with waterfalls and other people walking around, and you've got the big stage there where you can see the speakers, and you could just move around, and they've added like gamification where you can collect little things around the place. You can talk to other people and connect and chat via voice or text. It's just so interesting that you can attend an event like that. And this is going to happen with concerts, with all sorts of things where the imagination will create these virtual worlds where we can interact, not only play games, but have meetings and, work. And in that virtual world, you're going to have all your brands and businesses doing the same thing they're doing in the real world. You'll have a virtual Starbucks where you can meet your friends in the Starbucks and buy an NFT coffee or something, and it'll be done in a Starbucks, because that's where the brand is. It's very much like when you're playing soccer, FIFA in games, they still advertise on those fields, and those adverts are still paid for ads inside the game. So the medium's going to change.
It's amazing how it's clearly going to keep on changing behaviors and changing the way people not only work or live, but what they buy and how they spend their time, how they spend their free time. Instead of going, like you said, going to a Starbucks, they'd rather go to a digital one. And so part of that is probably accelerated, like you've said, with what's happened over the last 18 months around the world. And so I think that's definitely a leveling force, pushed everybody more into these digital spaces, these metaverses where it just makes sense and it's more convenient to interact digitally. But it also seems that, to me at least, that it poses a different question, or maybe even a challenge, to the concept of identity. Because like you mentioned in that conference that you attended, and I've seen this as well in various other online events and so on, it doesn't really matter who you are. In fact, you can change your appearance. You can, even on business conference calls now with clients and so on, often I'll never actually see the other person's face. Sometimes I might not even hear them. So the concept of who that person is, down to, their sort of physical attributes and who they are, is almost going to become completely separated from what they do or what their purpose is in that digital space. And I'd imagine, especially with more and more people being, kind of coming into this space, it's probably going to really go in this direction a whole lot more, where identities and digital identities will just live separately.
Yeah, I mean, I think we already live separately with our digital identities. I mean, very few people are the people that are on Instagram,
that's a brilliant example.
I mean, TikTok is more authentic in its approach and more real, but, everybody is wearing a mask. And I think the identity in these new virtual worlds, it'll be like your super ego, and you can be whoever you want. And I think that's the freedom. But you must also realize that, digitizing all these material things. So if like a Louis Vuitton bag has got the same value in the digital realm, think about how we value materialistic things. Today we're buying different fast fashion items and, polluting the world with different things. And we're moving towards being minimalists and using less stuff, but we still want to flex to the rest of the world, So that blue tick, for example, could be an avatar of yourself, that represents something. Or like the guys using those CryptoPunk NFTs as their picture, represents that they belong to the CryptoPunk community, that, they have a certain level of money because they can afford a JPEG that is worth $1 million or whatever. It kind of changes the whole dynamic of how we are as human beings and how we consume. And, so I think like it'll push people to, I don't know, be more, if that makes sense, because when you can hide behind a mask, you can do a lot more. I know it's not ideal, but it's almost like you can be anybody. And in that virtual sense, 1 minute you can be this G.I. Joe, like trying to save the world, and the next you can be this person doing a conference online in this virtual world, and then you attend. There's just so much in the space, so it's difficult to say exactly how we will evolve as human beings. Especially our identities.
I'd imagine it will also put a premium on things that do stay in the physical world, because as more and more of this gets moved into virtual experiences, which is obviously where it's going, where it has been going, then the kinds of things that are more difficult to replicate in a virtual space, like, for example, personal interaction, physical interaction between people, there's still something there that, others might crave, that you want, that you need. you'll probably find that those almost become incredibly commodified as time goes by. But I suppose that's something that we'll have to keep an eye on. So last question for me: are there any things at the moment that's kind of catching your eye in terms of how you're sort of navigating the crypto space? What are you excited about at the moment? If there's sort of one example or one thing in particular.
Oh, there's so many. Once you take that pill, there's no coming back. It's like you start to see the possibilities of this technology, and you almost become an advocate for it, because it's so powerful. Because it for me, by playing in this game and partaking in this space, it's almost like I'm contributing to a better world, because there's a lot of unbanked people in the world. There's a lot of people that don't have access to the things we might have access to. And this levels out the playing field, and that's what I like about it. So just for that reason, just to help move this technology forward and reach adoption, I take part in it. From an excitement point of view, is like, I think within the next 5 years, we'll be interacting with the blockchain one way or another you might not even know that you're doing it.
Yeah.
But also, I think it's gonna really highlight solutions that a lot of us are depressed about. We're depressed about the environmental impact that global industry has on the planet. We depressed about the disparity between the rich and the poor. There's so many issues that face us, and I'm not saying blockchain will magically solve these, but it really tackles these issues at the heart of things. And a big part of this greed that governments and organization has, this like old way of doing things just doesn't work anymore. Like the younger generation don't want to work like this. They want to control their own finances. They want to control their own lives. They want to control themselves. They want to work within a system, but they just feel the system is unfair. And that's why Bitcoin was born, and this blockchain technology was born. It was born out of the housing crisis in 2008, where the banks and these places got bailed out while many, many people lost a lot of money. And, that's where technology gets born, out of frustration and an absolute need to change something. And it just so happens to be blockchain and crypto. And it's an amazing change. And I think if you're not part of it, you're doing yourself a disservice, because you're just gonna slow yourself down, whether you're a person or a business. This technology can really, really help you.
Wonderful, man. Wow. It's been amazing to talk to you and to get, I think also some of the listeners must have, received a proper education there on some of the things that you've gone through. I certainly have appreciated your time, and good to get enlightened about some of these things, even if it's often some of the things that we sort of know about or hear about. Sometimes just having it reintroduced or redefined again and again helps to really, not only for you to understand it on a technical level, but to really see the application of it on an everyday basis, which is where the money is, so to speak. So, I really
appreciate it. If you understand it, you'll see. I guarantee you. Anyone looking into this will find something of interest in what they do, one way or another. Whether you're creative or a business person or something in between, you will find something to relate to with this technology, and it will be an advantage.
Yeah. Well, it's only becoming bigger and more differentiated, and as a result, safer and more secure and more able So I think the sky's the limit. Yeah.
There's a lot of smart people working in the space, a lot of smart people. And we shouldn't underestimate how quickly this technology can be adopted. And just to paint a picture, blockchain is being adopted twice as fast as the internet was adopted.
Wow.
So what took us 20 years to get here will take blockchain half the time. Yeah. So it's something
really well
to
on its way.
And the way we use the internet now, it's like second nature to us. Like we can't live without the internet, and the same will be applied to blockchain. You will not be able to live without doing something on the blockchain.
Wow.
Yeah.
Exciting. And I think it becomes more exciting the more you learn about it. That's why the education element is just so important. Yeah. So hopefully that becomes clearer and easier to do. As time goes by, I'm sure it will.
Yeah, I think it will. I mean, most of the crypto companies or exchanges have training material and, a lot of great courses to just brush up on what the space is about, And there's also a lot of good stuff online as well to educate yourself with. I mean, you've got to continually upskill yourself.
Yeah. Yeah, on anything. Yeah.
On everything.
Vincent, thanks again for your time. I hope you'll jump on again at some point on the Humble Pie. And looking
Maybe
forward
we should
to
revisit the cryptocurrency chat in a year's time and see how much it's changed.
Absolutely, a part 2. We'll probably need more than 45 minutes to cover that update.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Thanks.
No, cool, man. Thanks for having me, and I hope your audience definitely learned something and that they use it for their advantage.